Okay, at this time, each candidate has the opportunity to ask their opponent a question, and they have 30 seconds in which to ask that question. There will also be a minute 15 to respond and a 30-second rebuttal opportunity. We had a drawing, and Governor Martinez goes first. She will ask Mr. King her question.
Thank you. Mr. King, the Albuquerque Journal has said you are a soft attorney general on corruption. You never investigated or prosecuted Bill Richardson for his wrongdoing. The case on Rebecca Vigil Giron was dismissed, and the Housing Authority case was a total bust. If you had the opportunity to do it again, what would you do differently?
You know, and the Albuquerque Journal doesn't always get everything right either, Mr. Monteleone. Sorry about that. But my office was the first one that actually had a specialized unit to deal with government corruption. And we have removed more officials from state government than anyone else ever has. And so sometimes people focus on the cases where the result was not the best. And the governor was a prosecutor for many years, and I'm sure that there were cases, Governor, where you didn't get convictions where you thought you should get convictions too. But we get out there and work every day, and one of the reasons my office has been subject to criticism is because we actually have been out there doing something, and there were very few attorneys general or anybody else before us that really took corruption seriously and took it on. And with regard to Bill Richardson, the governor was a prosecutor. She knows that it's inappropriate for a prosecutor to claim that somebody ought to be prosecuted when there's not sufficient evidence for us to feel like we have a reasonable chance of getting a conviction. And she actually has her cabinet secretary, who was the U.S. attorney before, who had the full power of the FBI behind him, and they also found that there was not sufficient evidence to bring any charges against Bill Richardson. So the Bill Richardson issue is just a red herring, and very disappointing for me that the governor, as a career prosecutor, would encourage me to prosecute somebody that, excuse me, certainly.
Governor, 30-second rebuttal.
You know, the decision to investigate Bill Richardson, or 5.5 years later of the case on Rebecca Vigil Giron being dismissed, and the Housing Authority receiving the lowest plea bargain that I have ever seen before. I cannot imagine how you can say that you are an effective Attorney General, and now you want a promotion. I tell the people of New Mexico that the way he has performed is the way he will perform in the future.
Okay, time is up, Governor. Thank you. Attorney General Gary King, you now have 30 seconds to ask your question of the governor. Go ahead.
Yes, Governor, I note that a lot of your cabinet secretaries are people who come from outside the state of New Mexico and who don't seem to have empathy for New Mexicans' problems and don't really seem to have the qualifications that it takes to run the agencies that they run. And I'm thinking about Hannah Scandera at the Education Department, and I'm thinking about Sidney Squire at the Human Services Department. Why is it that you have passed over New Mexicans in favor of taking these cabinet secretaries from out of state who don't have empathy for New Mexico issues?
Actually, I believe in New Mexico, and I believe that New Mexico deserves the best. And so whenever, for example, a university does some sort of recruitment for president, it's nationwide. They look nationwide because you're looking for the best. You're looking for the best to provide the service for your kids. Hannah Scandera, Sidney Squire, anyone on the job is what I want is the best qualified individual, even if they don't live here. Because at the end of the day, it's all New Mexicans who benefit from the qualifications that they bring, the passion that they bring, and the reforms that they bring to make New Mexico the state that it deserves to be. And that's one of the best states in the country.
Mr. King, 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Well, I think that New Mexicans do deserve the best, and I think that there are highly qualified New Mexicans, and one of the things I'm committed to should I be elected governor, is to make sure that we have an education secretary who has real New Mexico classroom experience to head that agency, because sometimes somebody that looks good on paper doesn't do such a good job, and I think that the governor ought to look at some of her cabinet secretaries, because very difficult to claim that they're the best that can be found.
All right, Albuquerque Journal reporter James Monteleone will ask our next question. Because of time constraints, there will be a 1-minute response this time, not 1:15. James.
Some say environmental protections have been rolled back in New Mexico over the past 4 years. How do you feel New Mexico strikes a balance between business interests, such as mining and oil and gas production, with environmental protections?
Mr. King, 1 minute.
Yes, you know, I think protecting our water and protecting our environment are some of the most important things. We can't have business in New Mexico unless we have water resources. And the governor's agencies have been rolling back environmental protections with regard to something called the copper rule that would allow copper mines to inject polluted water directly into the groundwater. And once we pollute our groundwater, we can never get it back again. And so it's important to have a good business climate, but it's important for business that makes a profit in New Mexico to understand that they have to behave, that they have to take care of our resources just as much as we want to take care of them, because we want to have water resources for the next 100 years, for the next 1,000 years, for all of our people. And if we allow short-term profit for business to overcome what we know is the long-term best interests of our people in the state of New Mexico, that's wrong.
All right, Governor, you have 1 minute response.
I am certainly a very strong supporter of our environment and making sure that it is clean and safe for our children in the future. However, there has to be a balance between protecting our environment and making sure that we have a strong economy. And we have been able to do that. There are regulations that are in place that protect our water, our groundwater, and our aquifers. And the mining rule that was referred to by my opponent is the toughest mining rule in the country. And that is why I am committed to, when you violate those regulations that are in place, you will be fined. And we have fined individuals up to $30 million because they have violated those regulations. And so we will protect the environment, but we will also balance it with the impact that it has on job creation and on jobs that exist here in New Mexico, so that we don't lose those jobs like under the previous administration, and they left our state to other states to make a living.
Mr. King, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, as I said, I mean, I think that the record speaks for itself. One of the things that the governor's agencies have been doing is just failing to inspect, either for environmental problems or for occupational safety violations. And so we have a very dangerous situation in New Mexico right now because our agencies are not carrying out their duties. And besides having good laws in place, we have to carry out our responsibilities to do the inspections as well.
Governor, half-minute rebuttal.
You know, I know that our state agencies are very much in touch with who is following the regulations and who isn't, and that's why I was able to give you a figure of $30 million of penalties that have been actually imposed on people who violate the regulations. I want our environment to be safe, but I also want a balance that allows for our small businesses to grow and for them not to leave because we have over-regulated them to the point that there is no purpose in that regulation.
All right, it's now time for closing statements. We are giving each candidate 60 seconds to tell you why they deserve your vote. A drawing was also held to decide the voter. The order, we begin with Governor Martinez.
You know, the decision in this campaign is very clear. Either electing a politician who has changed his vote depending on what position he's running for, or a leader, someone who says what they're going to do, follows through with their promises, or continues to fight for that which voters in New Mexico want me to do. And the choice is very clear. I think that the best days for New Mexico are ahead of us because I believe in New Mexico. And we cannot ever return to the days of the past, because that will take us nowhere. Moving forward with our reforms, moving forward with the people of New Mexico, we can make New Mexico amazing. I believe in what we've done in New Mexico.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. King, you also have 60 seconds for your closing statement.
Well, you know, we teach our children that character counts. And one of the things that's important is that your elected officials be willing to address the problems and tell you the truth. And you've seen a lot of things from the governor, advertisements that they do, things that she said tonight that are just not the truth. And we're never going to solve our problems in New Mexico unless we tell the truth. And so the budget that she balanced was balanced on the backs of reducing money for special education, reducing money for people that have developmental disabilities. We need somebody in New Mexico who cares about the people of New Mexico more than they do their own political career. And she likes to call me a politician, but the governor has spent her entire career on the taxpayer's dollar. I've had small businesses. I had my own law firm. I worked for a small environmental engineering company. I have made a payroll. I've paid taxes. We should see who the politician is. The governor has been in elected office for many, many years. And the problem we have in New Mexico is it's time for the excuses to end. It's time for us to do something in New Mexico that gets us out of the bottom of poverty, that gets us out of the bottom in child welfare. And I will do that. Thank you.
All right, that concludes tonight's debate. KOAT and the Albuquerque Journal would like to thank you, Republican candidate Susana Martinez and Democratic candidate Attorney General Gary King, and of course, thanks to our panel, Shelley Rabando of Action 7 News, James Monteleone of the Albuquerque Journal, and KOAT Action 7 News anchor Todd Kurtz. Also, we'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for their participation tonight as timekeepers.